An inspector can send a violation notice to the building owner, irrespective of any violations, or lack thereof, by the contractor of record. An inspector can also send violation notices to both the building owner and the building department. In most jurisdictions, inspectors are legally required to report violations of building codes and safety regulations. If an inspector believes a situation is dangerous, they can issue an order requiring the property owner to take action within a specified time frame, even after 30 days from sending the initial notice of defects. Inspectors and their companies can be held liable if they fail to report safety violations or if the actions, or lack thereof, results in harm to persons or property. The building inspector's role is critical for ensuring compliance with safety standards and building codes. When an inspector observes safety-related violations while on site, they have several courses of action available, as well as legal obligations they must fulfill. Firstly, the inspector has the authority to issue a violation notice directly to the building owner. This action is independent of the contractor's compliance record. Even if the contractor of record has no outstanding violations for the specific work, the inspector is empowered to address any code violations observed on the property. Secondly, the inspector can, and often should, send violation notices to both the building owner and the building department. This dual notification ensures that the building owner is formally informed of the violations and that the building department is aware of the issues, facilitating of oversight and enforcement. Thirdly, in the majority of jurisdictions, inspectors have a legal obligation to report violations of building codes and safety regulations. This duty is not merely discretionary, it is a mandated responsibility. Failure to report known violations can expose the inspector and the company to legal repercussions. Fourthly, an inspector retains the authority to insist on corrective action even after a 30-day period from the initial notice of defects, especially if the situation is deemed dangerous. If the violations remain unaddressed and pose an imminent threat, the inspector can issue a formal order requiring the property owner to take immediate action within a specified time frame. The specified time frame would be determined by the inspector. Fifthly, inspectors and their companies face potential liability if they fail to report safety violations or if their inaction leads to harm to individuals or property. The scope of liability can be substantial, potentially involving financial penalties, legal judgments, and reputational damage. In summary, the inspector's role involves a complex interplay of authority, responsibility, and potential liability. Inspectors should be thoroughly familiar with their local building codes, safety regulations, and legal obligations. Accurate and timely reporting of violations is crucial to ensure public safety and mitigate personal and professional risks. To further elaborate, the legal requirement for inspectors to report violations arises from the need to protect public safety and welfare. Building codes and safety regulations are designed to minimize risks associated with construction, occupancy, and use of buildings. When these codes are violated, the potential for accidents, injuries, and property damage increases. The inspector serves as a critical line of defense in preventing these negative outcomes. The specific requirements for reporting violations can vary depending on the jurisdiction. However, in general, inspectors are expected to document the violations in writing, provide a clear description of the issues, cite the specific code sections that have been violated, and specify a time frame for corrective action. The violation notice should be sent to the building owner and, in many cases, also to the building department or other relevant regulatory agencies. The inspector should also maintain a record of the violation notice and any subsequent communications or actions related to the violation. When determining whether a situation is dangerous and requires immediate action, the inspector should consider a range of factors. These factors may include the severity of the violation, the potential for injury or property damage, the number of people at risk, and the likelihood of an accident occurring. For example, a structural defect that could lead to a building collapse would be considered a highly dangerous situation requiring immediate attention. Similarly, an electrical hazard that could cause a fire or electrocution would also warrant prompt action. If an inspector believes that a situation is dangerous, they have the authority to issue an order requiring the property owner to take corrective action within a specified time frame. This order should be clear, specific, and enforceable. It should describe the violations, the required corrective actions, and the timeframe for completion. The inspector should also follow up to ensure that the corrective actions are taken and that the violations are resolved. The liability of inspectors and their companies for failing to report safety violations can be significant. If an inspector knows of a violation that poses a risk to public safety and fails to report it, they could be held liable for any resulting injuries or damages. The inspector's company could also be held liable under the principle of vicarious liability, which holds employers responsible for the actions of their employees. The amount of damages that an inspector or their company could be required to pay would depend on the severity of the injuries or damages, the extent of the inspector's negligence, and the applicable laws and regulations. In some cases, inspectors could also face criminal charges for failing to report safety violations. To mitigate the risk of liability, inspectors should take several steps. Firstly, they should be thoroughly familiar with the building code's safety regulations and legal obligations in their jurisdiction. Secondly, they should conduct thorough and comprehensive inspections. Thirdly, they should document all violations in writing and maintain accurate records. Fourthly, they should report all violations to the appropriate authorities in a timely manner. Fifthly, they should follow up to ensure that corrective actions are taken and that the violations are resolved. Inspectors should also consider obtaining professional liability insurance to protect themselves against potential claims of negligence. In addition to the above, it is important for inspectors to maintain their professional competence through continuing education and training. Building codes and safety regulations are constantly evolving, and inspectors need to stay up to date on the latest changes. They should also be aware of new technologies and techniques that can improve the accuracy and efficiency of their inspections. By taking these steps, inspectors can help to ensure public safety, protect themselves from liability, and maintain their professional reputation. Furthermore, inspectors should exercise good judgment and common sense when conducting inspections. They should not blindly follow the code without considering the specific circumstances of each situation. If they encounter a situation that is not specifically addressed by the code, they should use their professional expertise to determine the appropriate course of action. Inspectors should also be aware of the limitations of their own knowledge and skills. If they encounter a situation that is beyond their expertise, they should consult with other professionals, such as engineers or architects. By working collaboratively with other professionals, inspectors can ensure that buildings are safe and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations. Finally, inspectors should maintain a professional and ethical approach to their work. They should avoid conflicts of interest and should not accept bribes or other inducements. They should also treat all parties fairly and impartially. By adhering to these principles, inspectors can maintain the public's trust and confidence in the building inspection process. The responsibilities of a building inspector extend beyond simply identifying code violations. They also play a crucial role in educating building owners, contractors, and the public about building safety. Inspectors can provide guidance and advice on how to comply with building codes and safety regulations. They can also answer questions and address concerns about building safety issues. By acting as educators, inspectors can help to prevent future code violations and promote a culture of building safety. It is also important to recognize that building inspections are not always adversarial. In many cases, inspectors work collaboratively with building owners and contractors to resolve code violations and ensure that buildings are safe. Inspectors can provide technical assistance, offer suggestions for corrective action, and help to facilitate the permitting process. By fostering a cooperative relationship with building owners and contractors, inspectors can achieve better outcomes and promote a more positive image of the building inspection profession. In conclusion, the role of a building inspector is multifaceted and essential for ensuring public safety and welfare. Inspectors must possess a strong understanding of building codes, safety regulations, and legal obligations. They must be able to conduct thorough and comprehensive inspections, document violations accurately, and report violations promptly. They must also be able to exercise good judgment, communicate effectively, and maintain a professional and ethical approach to their work. By fulfilling these responsibilities, inspectors can help to create a safer and more sustainable built environment. The question regarding the inspector's ability to insist on corrective action after 30 days warrants further discussion. The key here is the determination of whether the situation remains dangerous. The initial notice of defects serves as a formal notification to the building owner that violations exist and need to be addressed. The 30-day time frame is often a standard period allowed for the owner to take action. However, if the violations persist beyond this time frame and continue to pose a significant risk to safety, the inspector is not only justified but often obligated to take further action. This action could involve issuing a more stringent order, such as a cease and desist order, or escalating the matter to the building department for enforcement. The inspector's decision to insist on corrective action should be based on a careful assessment of the situation, considering factors such as the severity of the violations, the potential for harm, and the owner's demonstrated willingness to comply. The inspector should document their findings and actions thoroughly, providing a clear rationale for their decision. Furthermore, the inspector should be aware of the specific procedures and protocols in their jurisdiction for handling unresolved violations. This may involve consulting with legal counsel or seeking guidance from the building department. In cases where the building owner isn't cooperative or refuses to take corrective action, the inspector may need to pursue legal remedies such as obtaining a court order to compel compliance. This can be a complex and time-consuming process, but it is often necessary to protect public safety. The inspector's company also has a role to play in supporting the inspector in these situations. The company should provide the inspector with the necessary training, resources, and legal support to effectively address safety violations and enforce building codes. The company should also have a clear policy on how to handle unresolved violations and should be prepared to take appropriate action to protect the interests of its clients and the public. It is important to note that the inspector's authority and responsibility are not unlimited. The inspector must act within the scope of their authority and in accordance with applicable laws and regulations. They must also exercise reasonable care and diligence in performing their duties. If an inspector acts negligently or exceeds their authority, they could be held liable for any resulting damages. Therefore, it is essential for inspectors to be thoroughly familiar with their legal obligations and to seek guidance from legal counsel when necessary. In addition to the above, inspectors should be aware of the potential for conflicts of interest. They should not perform inspections on properties in which they have a personal or financial interest. They should also avoid accepting gifts or favors from building owners or contractors that could compromise their impartiality. By maintaining their independence and objectivity, inspectors can ensure that their decisions are based on the merits of the case and not on personal considerations. The building inspection profession plays a vital role in ensuring the safety and quality of the built environment. Inspectors are entrusted with the responsibility of protecting public health, safety, and welfare. By fulfilling their duties diligently and ethically, inspectors can make a significant contribution to the well-being of their communities.